Russian President Vladimir Putin is not backing down in Ukraine. However, during a private meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Uzbekistan Thursday, Putin reportedly acknowledged China's concerns over the war. For more on this, let's bring in Alexander Gabuyev. He's a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Alexander is also a senior advisor at Albright Stonebridge Group, a global business strategy firm. Alexander, I want to ask you about a piece you wrote in Foreign Affairs. This was the headline: China's new vassal, how the war in Ukraine turned Moscow into Beijing's junior partner. What does that mean?
I think that the symmetry in the relationship was already there. Russia is a far smaller economy. China is a more stronger partner. But the war has exacerbated this trend. Russia is fairly isolated. Its ties to the West, the traditional source of technology, traditional source of financing and market for Russian hydrocarbons, are now broken by sanctions. And it has to turn to China, which gives China its increasing amount of leverage over Russia.
What do you think the nationalists in Russia think about this idea of Putin being the junior partner?
That's not the way it's framed in Russia. People are having so much tunnel vision of this war in Ukraine being of paramount importance for the state. And the regime itself portrays it that way. So if China is a partner and provides resources that we use to combat the West, and the struggle is portrayed as struggle against the U.S. ultimately, that's okay.
In this meeting, Xi Jinping promised strong support of Russia's core interests. How do you read what that means?
He definitely is very comfortably sitting on the fence, or something bigger like the Great Wall of China, supporting rhetorically Ukrainian territorial integrity and sovereignty, and at the same time not violating U.S. sanctions and not providing Russia with war material, because relationship with the West are still of paramount importance, but doing everything outside of the scope of sanctions, and thus throwing a lifeline to the Kremlin.
Do you think China... One of the fears has always been that Russia might use nuclear weapons in some way. Do you think the fact that China is an ally of Russia, or is in this fence-sitting posture you mentioned, but is certainly giving comfort to Putin, that using nuclear weapons in any form would be too much for China, and that in that way, China is actually a brake on what Putin might do?
China sees it the way that Putin's foreign policy is like a hurricane. You cannot control it, you need to adapt it. They don't believe that they have leverage to stop Putin. So if Putin believes that his red lines are crossed, for example, Ukraine decides to take out Crimea Bridge or launch a full offensive, and he uses the nukes, I'm afraid that China is not the country that will be able to stop or dissuade Mr. Putin.
Do we think there is any way their relationship could fall apart? Is this just a meeting of convenience between China and Russia, or is there something deeper there that suggests a longer shift in the way we should think about global relations more broadly?
Marriages of convenience can be pretty durable and mutually advantageous. And here is one example where the pragmatic overlap of interests is there. And there is also the secret sauce, their joint animosity towards the U.S. I think that long-term, as Russia gets more dependent on China, it will be seen many downsides of this relationship. But as Putin's myopic view is focused so much on its confrontation with the U.S., so far it's working for the Kremlin.
Okay. Alexander Gabuyev, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.